on the Gainbridge Ball State Cardinals Sports Network from Learfield. Welcome to Fast Break, a Ball State athletics podcast dedicated to the Cardinals women's basketball team. Presented by Gainbridge, here are your hosts, Dom Liacani and Sam Niger.
Happy belated New Year, everyone, and welcome inside episode number 6 of Fast Break, presented by Gainbridge, a Ball State women's basketball podcast. My name's Dominic Liacani, joined as always by my co-host, Mr. Sam Niger. We've got a ton to break down and get you set for as we continue to roll on early in the Mid-American Conference year. Sam, an incredible start for the Cards in MAC play, 3-0, the only undefeated team left in the conference. You couldn't ask for a better start.
Yeah, certainly we've grown to expect success from Ball State, and they definitely had that in the early games of MAC play, but the fact that some of these other top Mid-American Conference teams are slipping up might be boding well for the Cardinals here in the weeks to come. Still a lot of basketball left to be played, but you love what you're seeing out of the Cardinals as we're about nearing that midway point in January.
So we're back on campus. The second semester of classes have officially commenced on Monday, March 6th. We're recording this on Thursday, March 6th, January 6th.
Yeah, there you go.
Wow,
We're getting ahead. We're getting to tournament time, huh?
Listen, I was already thinking way ahead. New Year just started. I'm already talking about March. No, January 6th, the first day of classes. This past Monday, recording this episode on January 9th. We'll break down the first 3 games in Mid-American Conference play for the Cardinals. That's Miami, Ohio, Central Michigan, and Eastern Michigan. And then we'll take a look at what is coming up the next 3 games slated on the schedule: at Buffalo, at Kent, and then against Akron to finish off in that 2-week frame for you. And then we'll also have a really exciting interview with the up-and-coming hot shot from beyond the arc. They call her Hollywood, but boy, has she been absolutely phenomenal. Grace Kingery, the freshman, has really carved a role for herself out on this team here in the middle of this season. Super excited to get a chance to sit down and chat with her. But Sam, what's the start of the second semester been like for you? Because I know things are busy and you get into break and then you take a little time off, and then it's kind of you're just thrown into the fire again.
Yeah, it really is not like the start to that first semester where you kind of ease your way into it, especially when we're in the middle of hoop season. You get back on campus here in Muncie, and you just kind of keep going. We were on campus, both of us, over break a little bit, calling some games for the women's team, of course. I was in town doing a little sideline for the men's team on TV as well. So I've been in and out of Muncie over the past couple of months, but I'm happy to be back in the studio with you today rather than doing this thing on Zoom. It's great to be able to chat face-to-face.
Right, the quality is just so much clearer, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's incredible. So we start by talking about New Year's Day in the MAC opener in Oxford against Miami of Ohio, and Ball State, a 13-point victory. A game that you could say was quote-unquote close early. It was very back and forth. Miami had it cut down to just a 2-point lead for the Cardinals at one point. But when you look at the stat sheet, Allie Becky, her first of back-to-back 20-plus point nights, that's going to help the Cardinals to a 13-point victory, 68-55, the final there. Sam, you went to Oxford with the team. You met the team in Oxford, called that game. What did you see from your perspective in the MAC opener, and were you impressed with how the Cardinals started MAC play?
I was very impressed, Dom. First of all, because of the circumstances of that game. January 1st, they spent New Year's Eve in a hotel. When in talking with Coach Sally pregame, he's like, they watched the ball drop and they went to bed. So credit to them for that. Didn't let the circumstances of it being New Year's Day get to them. But, you know, when you have that 12-day absence of games and a 16-day absence of a Division I opponent, Ball State's most previous opponent before that Miami game was Anderson, there are some questions. There are some concerns of how the team is going to look, you know, coming back after such a long hiatus. And although they didn't jump out to the hottest lead, it was just 13-10 at the end of the first quarter, and Miami continued to hang around. They had it close, not just early, they held it close in the third and fourth quarter as well. But what I was really impressed with out of Ball State was their ability to finish. And Brady Sally said this in his post-game comments as well. He said that the reason they won the game by double digits was because of their tenacity and because of the fact that they had more experience. That's a Miami team that's a lot better this season than they were last season. And although we don't know a ton about the Mid-American Conference as of right now, just because we are so early in the season, I can pretty definitively say that this is a Miami team that it has made some significant strides this season compared to last season. With that in mind, I think the coaching was so much better down the stretch from Ball State. the depth of this Ball State team, the physicality, their will to win, knowing that they're going to get the best shot out of every opponent they play, it kind of came to the forefront. It came to fruition in those final 5 minutes, and it allowed Ball State to carve out a much larger lead for itself, ultimately winning in pretty grandiose fashion by 13 points on the road. Definitely nothing to scoff at, and the defense was stellar as well, Dom.
Well, you talk about the defense. 31 points off of turnovers
Yep.
is certainly going to help. We mentioned Allie Becky's 22 points on 8 of 14 shooting, 1 for 2 from beyond the arc, went a perfect 5 for 5 from the free throw line, 9 rebounds as well. So just a rebound away from a double-double for Allie. Grace Kingery, another spectacular performance, 18 points, 5 of 10 shooting, 5 of 9 from beyond the arc. And, we mentioned her a little bit earlier, and we'll have her on this episode later in the show. But it's just been so special to see her really find her way on this team. Coming into the preseason, a lot of people weren't very hesitant to overlook these freshmen just because of the depth, right, that this team had coming into the year. But Maddie Bischoff goes down with injury. Grace Kingery's turn to step up. There's a reason that she's one of the best sharpshooters from beyond the arc. She was coming out of high school. Brady Sally felt that this team got the best perimeter shooter in the Midwest out of this previous recruiting class. She's been paying dividends so far.
She has, and you had to wonder at some point after that breakout game against Northern Kentucky if she would ever have a cold game. Is she ever going to go cold, or is this the Grace Kingery of the future from here on out? And although she hasn't been maybe as explosive as that Northern Kentucky game in the games since then, she's had double digits in each of her first 3 Mid-American Conference games, and that's even in what you could call a quote-unquote off night against Central Michigan. We'll get to that in a minute, Dom, because I know you had that game, but just the way with which Kingery conducts herself on the court, like ice in her veins is not an overstatement. Like, she is cool, calm, and collected out there. She's got a hand in her face when she's shooting from deep. She plays great defense. I mean, she is a cool customer when she's out there, even when she's coming off the bench or if she's starting. She has turned into a stellar player for this Ball State team, and definitely something that they needed. Obviously, you don't want to look too far ahead into the future. We know this team's goals for this season, but you're going to lose your core 4 at the end of this year. That's Becky, Bischoff, Richard, and Kiefer. You've got to have players that are going to be able to slide into that starting roster come next season, and right now, Grace Kingery seems to be one of the favorites to be able to do so, Dom.
No doubt about it. Grace Kingery has been special, and her and Allie Becky helped guide the Cardinals to a 13-point victory in the MAC opener against Miami last Wednesday. Then you take a look at this past Saturday in a game that the Cardinals would probably like to take back, even though it was a double-digit victory. 72-61 the final against Central Michigan. This was a Central Michigan team that was coming in dead last in the Mid-American Conference coaches poll. A lot of question marks around this CMU team under a second-year head coach in Kristen Haney, who has done a nice job of bringing in some fresh young talent and some talent from other levels of college basketball that have had success in bringing that into a program, trying to get more and more experience built around a young core. But ultimately, the Cardinals get out-rebounded by double digits. And talking with Brady Sally after that game, he said the biggest reason we were able to win by double digits is because of our ability to turn teams over. But he was not happy with the focus and the effort for the full 40 minutes that he saw from his Cardinals. Again, the bright spots, 3 players in double figures. Again, Allie Becky, 20 points on 5 of 9 shooting. Alex Richards, 16 points on 7 of 12 shooting, even though she just went 2 for 8 from the free throw line.
Yeah.
Still a fantastic performance in her first game back in Worthen in about a month and a half. So, I don't know. It was a really funky, kooky game in my opinion, because Ball State still handily won this game, I think, even though there were some times when CMU closed that gap in the second and third quarter, especially when you get outscored by 7 points in the second quarter if you're Ball State. But I think if Ball State could redo this game, the effort and focus would be there, and this could potentially be a 20 to 30 point game.
It definitely could, Dom, and I think Brady Sally's comments prior to that Eastern Michigan game kind of drove that point home. He said, If we hit our layups, if we make our free throws, if we have the tenacity with which we practice at, we win this game by 30 points. It's just not one of those things that happened on that Saturday. That being said, Dom, I think the ability to recognize a great team comes in whether or not they're able to win those games where they have an off day. Ball State had a very off day and still won by double digits, although there were some things in that game that were cause for concern, Dom. I know you witnessed it firsthand. You were on the call. What things from that game, what shortcomings from that win against Central Michigan do you think could pose some problems down the stretch? I'm thinking Cleveland here in the MAC tournament that Ball State's going to want to address ASAP so that they make sure they don't repeat this in more important, more pivotal games.
Well, the first thing I look at is the free throw shooting. When you only shoot 63%, 19 for 30, and you're given 30 opportunities to go to the charity stripe, you got to make at least 23 of those, 24 of those, right? You'd have to, and obviously there were some struggles there, but I think just the overall vibe I got from inside the arena, and it wasn't like the Cardinals didn't come to compete and weren't ready to play. I just don't think that the focus and effort was where Brady Sally would have liked it. There were a lot of times where you could see him frustrated, trying to call plays out on the bench, trying to get players in different spots, and it just seemed like there were some brain freezes here and there on some certain plays on screens and positioning on the court. If you want my opinion from what I saw, but I mean, look, obviously still when you're able to turn a team over 31 times, and I get a lot of Central Michigan's miscues were on its own. A lot of travels, a lot of violations, especially the travels on CMU. I want to say they traveled over 10 times in that basketball game, which certainly helped. But I look at the attention to detail and the free throw shooting in that game for Ball State. But if we want to pivot to Eastern Michigan, I tell you what, Ball State, they had a little something to prove with a chip on their shoulder. I'm sure Brady Sally got this team back in shape and kind of told them, hey, if we want to be great and we want to be winners, then we got to make statements in these games. We can't just come out with 10-point victories against teams like Central Michigan, Eastern Michigan. We got to come out with big margins of victories, and they certainly did against Eastern.
They absolutely did. 101-69 was the final score against Eastern Michigan. Now, that's a triple-digit scoring margin for Ball State.
In a MAC game.
In a MAC game, which is just absolutely unheard of. I understand that Eastern Michigan is a team that's facing a lot of controversy right now, not necessarily in off-court arenas, but when they're on the court under a first-year head coach in Saharnu Seba, who's bringing in 7 new faces, a team that just hasn't gelled yet, a team that's won but one game this year. You kind of got the feeling heading into tip-off last night that Ball State was going to take care of their business. You just wondered to what degree. Were they going to have a repeat of Central Michigan? Because on paper, they were a lot better than Central Michigan and only won by a slim margin. They're a lot better than Eastern Michigan on paper, but again, to quote Brady Sally, if the game was won on paper, they'd already be MAC champions at this point. That being said, Ball State followed up what they had on paper out on the court. I mean, it was phenomenal. The only thing that lacked last night was that free throw shooting again. 17 for 28 were the Cardinals, but they made up for it in other areas. There were 5 players in double figures, including Kingery off the bench again. 2 double-doubles between Alex Richard and Marie Kiefer, and that includes Kiefer fouling out of the ball game.
Right.
It was a chippy ball game. It was a game that didn't really have a whole lot of flow in the second half. It seemed like every Ball State possession, there was a whistle blown off ball for a foul against Eastern Michigan. It was one of the weirder games I've ever seen played and one of the weirder games in terms of officiating, but Ball State's ability to fight through all that muck, kind of weed their way through the jungle, if you will, and still come out with a 32-point victory, that speaks volumes to the Cardinals regardless of who their opponent is. Yes, we expected a big win, but to post 101 points in a Mid-American Conference game and to look as sharp as they did, I think Ball State cemented themselves as the team to beat in the MAC with that win on Wednesday night, rather.
Well, you talk about the double-doubles for both Alex and Marie. Alex plays 28 minutes. Marie only plays 23 minutes. That's efficiency at its finest. 10 points, 10 rebounds for Marie in just 23 minutes, and she fouled out early. And Brady said it during the post-game presser yesterday. Some of those fouls were a little ticky-tacky.
Very.
Towards the end, obviously, and I'm not going to get too much more into that, but you know what I mean. And,
I do.
No, it speaks to this team's response and how they handled what happened on Saturday against Central Michigan. This team's on a mission, and it's not just to be some average MAC team that slides in to the MAC tournament. No, we know what this team is capable of. They have to make statements like they did last night, for example, against teams like Eastern Michigan. You put up a 32-point victory. That's going to send a message to a lot of other teams in the conference, say, whoa, we may have only beat Central by 11, but look what we just did to follow that up against Eastern.
And you have to imagine that some of these other MAC teams are getting the message from Ball State that we can and will do this to you as well. I mean, it is embarrassing to get 30-balled by a conference opponent. And every team is afraid of this Ball State team. That doesn't mean they're not going to show up to play. Doesn't mean they're not going to give them their best. But they are afraid that what Ball State did to Eastern Michigan on Wednesday night, the Cards can easily do to their team as well. And that is something that is always in the back of the mind, and it gives Ball State just that little extra edge moving forward.
I do want to mention this as well. We forgot to touch on it after we recapped the Central contest. Allie Becky, MAC Player of the Week.
Yeah.
Reigning MAC Player
Phenomenal.
of the Week. In 2 games, averaged 21 points, 8.5 rebounds, 6 assists, 3 steals, 55% from the field. She won a perfect 13 for 13.
Unreal.
From the charity stripe.
Unreal.
That is what you need from your senior leader to set the table in MAC play.
And I haven't gotten on the podcast and said this, but this has been kind of my mantra in recent weeks in regards to Allie Becky. No player in the Mid-American Conference can you watch a game and think, they've kind of had an off night. They've kind of had a quiet night. And then look down at the stat sheet and say, wow, 15 to 20 points and almost a double-double. Allie Becky is the only player in the MAC that you can say that about. Only Allie Becky can score 15 points and you think to yourself, wow, she kind of had a quiet night. Her stats are unbelievable. Her distribution of the basketball is great. Her tenacity on defense is ferocious. She does all the little things right. You talk about the lack of attention to detail against Central Michigan. That was not the case for Allie. 8 for 8 from the free throw line. She had 20 points, 8 rebounds. She didn't struggle to score the basketball, and she's not even over 6 foot. She does all the little things right, and she's one of those players that elevates her teammates when they have off days. That's the reason why she won MAC Player of the Week, and that's why she's my favorite right now to win MAC Player of the Year as well, Dom.
Well, it's between, right now, at least in my opinion, the 2 front runners, Allie Becky and Chella Watson from Buffalo, and we'll talk about those next 3 games coming up. But before we do that, Sam, and before we talk to Grace, just your overall impressions of this team through the first 3 games of conference play.
You know, we've chatted, when we aren't on the air, Dom, about there's just so much parity in the MAC right now. We can't tell who's good. We can't tell who's not good. Kent State, who we thought was going to be Ball State's best competition, just lost on Wednesday night to Toledo. And I'm not saying that every team has to be perfect. We really only demand perfection from one team, and that's the Cardinals. And, of course, there's a little bias from us in that. But with that in mind, I think this parity in the MAC allows Ball State to be able to put on performances like they did against Eastern Michigan. Ball State's going to win a lot of games, and they're going to win a lot of games by a lot of points. Yes, they're going to have some tougher opponents, some closer games against Buffalo, Kent State, Toledo. I think those are the other big 3 probably. But they have the ability to win by double figures in all of those games as well because the other teams in the MAC are scratching and clawing, trying to find their way up to that 2 seed or to even make the tournament, that it allows Ball State, who's just been even keel throughout the entire year thus far, to kind of sit alone on top on the throne and watch the rest of the MAC destroy itself, in all honesty. I think that provides a significant advantage for Ball State, and if they continue to play at this kind of even-Steven level they have, there's not a lot that a lot of these MAC teams can do to try and knock the Cardinals off.
So Ball State starts 3-0 in Mid-American Conference play for the 2nd consecutive season. All right, when we come back here on Fast Break, we have the pleasure of being able to sit down with sharpshooter freshman Grace Kingery. Don't go anywhere. Our interview with her next here on Fast Break.
Sometimes it's not the moment. It's the moment before the moment. The moment you make a choice. The moment you take control. The moment only you can own. Gainbridge lets you invest on your terms. So you're not only in charge of this moment, but all the moments to come. Start investing now at Gainbridge.io.
Welcome back inside the 6th episode of Fast Break, everyone. Dominic Liacani, Sam Niger, here for Fast Break, presented by Gainbridge. And now we are pleased to be joined by a very special guest once again. It is the sharpshooting freshman out of Ohio in Grace Kingery. Grace, what's going on? We were talking a little bit before this, your first ever podcast. You're excited.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited. A little nervous, but, it's all good.
How's it going? I know you're a freshman and you're getting acclimated, not just to the team, but college as well.
Yeah.
Into a new semester now. What was the first semester like for you of college?
It was definitely, amazing. I got an opportunity and, showcase, and I did. And so, it's been great. And just, having this team, supporting me through everything and just guiding me along the way has been awesome.
Grace, you come from a long basketball background from Northeast Ohio. You were the OHSAA Player of the Year. Just walk us through what your recruiting process looked like, because there's so many good teams around you, good colleges around you with great basketball history. Why'd you end up eventually picking Ball State at the end of it?
Yeah, there's obviously the MAC is primarily in Ohio, so had a couple schools there and other conferences, but at the end of the day, it was when I came on my visit here, it felt like home, and I wanted to come to a program where I could win, and we had that winning culture here, and I think I fit in pretty well with offensively and just everything. So, and Brady's the culture that he makes it. So, yeah, it's pretty much what led me to the decision.
What was the recruiting process like with Ball State? Who reached out to you first? How did you get on Ball State's radar, and then where did it go from there?
So Coach Mo actually reached out to me, I'm pretty sure, first, and then, obviously goes down the line, Audrey, Brady. So, them coming to my AU tournaments, talking after, setting up a visit, then an official visit, which I eventually committed on my official visit. So, yeah, that's kind of how it worked out. And I actually committed really early compared to other people in my grade, so yeah, it was a good thing.
Did that help with the comfort level, I guess, then going into your next season of high school ball? Was I know where I am, I'm home, I can play a little bit more free and a little loose?
Yeah, definitely. It was a big stress reliever for my senior year and the rest of my junior year, where I could just play free, and, I already know where I'm going and my future, so.
And you averaged 26 points per game your final year of high school. How do you feel like that set you up for success then at the collegiate level?
Just having to, because my senior year, I was obviously the leader of the team. Everybody had graduated, so just getting that leadership aspect of it and being able to just lead the team pretty much. Yeah.
So you're the all-time leading scorer at your high school for both boys and girls. Do you remember the night that you broke the record?
Yeah, I do, and I actually had no idea that I was breaking it. My coach kept it from me, and all my teammates did. So, yeah, it was definitely awesome. Got all the basketball and everything, so it's all in the showcase and everything. So it's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. When it comes to your skill set now as a collegiate player, obviously the three ball is what you're known for. At what point did you realize in your youth career or your high school career? When did you realize that was kind of the niche that you fit in, that you were going to be able to take to the next level?
I think it was just during the recruiting process, just kind of watching all the games. I would watch all these other schools, and obviously watching Ball State's offense, I think I just fit in perfectly with being able to get my shots up, and I knew in college that's what I was going to have to do. So coming here, it just made sense.
So I want to talk about that Northern Kentucky game, because that was your big breakout. 7 3-pointers. You get your first collegiate start, but I want to focus more on the start aspect of it. When did you find out that you were getting your first collegiate start? What was that conversation like, and then how did you settle yourself in to ultimately do what you did?
Yeah, a few days before practice, Coach Mo brought up to me that it could be a possibility that I was starting, and it kind of took me by surprise because I'm a freshman, and that's not really that common. And then so I wasn't really sure until right before tip-off, they Brady wrote it on the board, and I ended up finding out I was starting. So kind of having to be ready, preparing at practice and just mentally just stepping up whenever, my name's called. So
what was different about that day? You had reps in the past, and now you get the first start. There had to be a lot of pressure. What allowed you to flip that switch to have the performance that you did?
Yeah, I think it's just my teammates. They're always being supportive of me and guiding me. Obviously, Elise is in my position group, and she's guided me pretty much from like the start of summer till now. We've had all these workouts together and everything. So just them having the confidence in me to be able to start and do my own thing is great.
So it's funny you mentioned Elise because Elise had mentioned you in the
Really?
preseason show.
Okay.
We had asked her because her coming in as a grad transfer and her taking on that big leadership role for the squad. We asked her, hey, who have you really taken under your wing? And she said you. How have you seen that relationship develop between you two?
Yeah, definitely in the summer, coming in as a freshman, you don't really know what to expect. And I think obviously she's been through it. She knows everything. So just her leading me, we've gotten closer, hung out, did all those things. So yeah, it's just learning from her and whatever she gives me this year, I obviously learn it from like now and years on. So,
I'm sitting there during the Northern Kentucky game. I know Dom had the call on the radio, but I'm listening to him, just call 3-point bucket after 3-point bucket from you. And I'm like, wow, she's legit. How did you then internalize that and not only turn that into a one-off game where you played really well, how have you pivoted that into consistently scoring double digits every night?
Oh, yeah, I think just once that happened, I, gained the confidence and I could actually do this at the collegiate level. And I think I maybe wasn't that confident, in the beginning of the season, but now obviously I have the trust with my coaches and my teammates. So, it makes it easy.
So after that game, now stop me if I'm wrong. So did Brady give you the nickname Hollywood?
Yes, he actually did. Yes, he did.
So how have you kind of embraced that? Because it's no secret, you're very cool, calm, and collected on the court. Where does that mindset come from for you when you just lock in, like you're so hyper-focused out on the court?
Yeah, when you get on the court, you kind of just take everything away. There's no distractions, so just being locked in, Brady jokes around, calls me Hollywood, Silk, all these nicknames. So, that comes with it. We joke around after the game, so it's always fun.
Have you embraced that nickname? Like, do you like that, Hollywood?
Oh, yeah, I like it. I mean, obviously, I'm the total opposite of that, but, he likes to call me that, so.
So I'm curious, like, I remember specifically in the Miami game, you hit an and one, and you were just like, no emotion on the face afterward. It took until you looked over at the bench at your teammates to finally crack a smile. Where does that come from? Like, have you always had that mentality of when I'm on the court, I'm locked in?
Oh, yeah, definitely, and I think it was also, like, a tight game, and, I knew I needed to hit, like, that free throw or, like, other shots coming up after that because that game was very close. And so, yeah, just being competitive, and obviously, like, my teammates, they got that juice in them, so they always got me.
I want to pivot a little bit and go all the way back because we talked about high school. We talked about your start to your collegiate career. But I want to ask, when did you fall in love with the game of basketball? How early of an age was it for you where you really said, hey, this is something I want to do?
Yeah, I think definitely like probably 7th grade is when I got serious because, that's when like the basketball is more organized. So I think then because like 7th, 8th grade, you're getting recognized by like high school coaches and stuff. So I didn't really know it was as serious of that I could play like at the collegiate level until like after my freshman year because, obviously that's when like the recruiting and stuff happens. So yeah, I didn't really think it would ever get to this point. So yeah.
If the Grace of right now could say something to that 7th grade Grace who is just now getting into basketball, what advice would you give her?
Just keep believing because, your dreams are going to come true eventually. So just keep on working, keep your head down, and stay focused.
Do you have a favorite memory of maybe like AAU ball or high school, middle school ball before college?
Yeah, I think so. I think like breaking like, all the records and the accolades, having that and just everything. But, there's other moments, big games you win and, the tournament obviously. But AAU, it's definitely just being with your teammates and, it's stressful. I have all these college coaches watching you and everything. So, but, we made it fun and, I get to see some of my teammates in the MAC and, other conferences, non-conference games. So that's always fun to see them.
So we've talked about the Grace from the past. We've talked about the Grace of this season. You are just a freshman and you're getting so many minutes. Have you thought at all about the Grace of the future? What are your goals for your time here at Ball State?
Yeah, well, obviously next year, we're graduating a lot. So obviously I think stepping into that role with, a few of my teammates who will be there next year of being like the leader of the team and just stepping in, is getting aspects of different parts of my game, defensively, getting to the rim, mid-range, all that kind of stuff. Just developing that more definitely next year for sure.
This team has been through a gauntlet of non-con, and then obviously you guys have a heck of a start to conference play. From your perspective, as someone who sees it firsthand, what have you liked about the way that your team has responded, not only to so much adversity that you guys have had, but than going on and say, okay, we're going to kick it in the teeth and we're going to start in high gear in conference play. What do you like about the state of this team right now?
Oh, yeah, we're tough. We knew that the non-conference is going to be a tough game, obviously playing them Power 5 games and all that stuff. Those games gets you ready for what conference is like. And, if one conference team's going to be physical with us, but we've already seen it. We've seen more than that. So, obviously, that's we're just a tough team and we're never going to back down. So,
And when it comes to the culture of this team, you've seen some MAC teams that you were able to breeze by. I specifically think of that Eastern Michigan game. Now you do have these games that you have to lock in for Buffalo and Kent State. What's different? What switch needs to flip as you head into these tougher contests?
Definitely the practices. It's got to be more amped up, and we got to be locked in and ready on game day because we know it's a big game. Obviously, Buffalo coming up, Kent coming up, Toledo eventually. So we got to lock in and be ready, and we're gonna get every team's best. So we always got to be prepared for that.
Before we let you go, obviously. For those who don't know listening, the team has a tradition after every road game, get ice cream.
Oh, yeah.
Brady did make a joke. You get 7 scoops or 7 licks after the Northern Kentucky performance. But I'm curious to know, what is your favorite flavor of ice cream?
Yeah. So actually, the Northern Kentucky game, I got the salted caramel ice cream, and then after Miami, I got the salted caramel milkshake. So yeah, I went to Grader's and then I think we went to United Dairy Farms after Northern Kentucky. So yeah, Brady did make a joke and said I get 7 scoops of ice cream when I got off the
That's
bus.
awesome.
So, yeah.
I like the variation there too, the shakes and then the ice cream there.
Oh yeah.
That's all. Well, Grace, we appreciate you joining us this episode of the podcast. Keep doing you, because you're a heck of a player, and we're excited to keep watching you this year.
Appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Been Grace Kingery here on Fast Break. When we come back, we'll wrap up our show. Don't go anywhere. This is Fast Break presented by GameBridge.
Sometimes it's not the moment. It's the moment before the moment. The moment you make a choice. The moment you take control. The moment only you can own. GameBridge lets you invest on your terms. So you're not only in charge of this moment, but all the moments to come. Start investing now at GameBridge.io.
Back inside Fast Break, huge thanks to Grace Kingery for taking some time and chatting with us, sitting down here in the Betsy M. Ross Sports Link studios. Always a great conversation when you get to talk to any player, but Grace Kingery, so mature for her age, I think.
And, I talk all the time about Grace's kind of composure on the court, the way in which she plays the game. Sometimes it doesn't look like she's even having any fun out there, yet she's, lighting teams up from beyond the arc. She never has a smile on her face when she's on the basketball court, but very smiley in the studio. Great to get to talk to her. She's just got a great personality, and you can tell she's building to be a leader for this program in years to come, Dom.
So let's go ahead, Sam, and take a look at the next 3 upcoming Mid-American Conference contests for these Ball State Cardinals. So we've got 2 away games to start in this 2-week span between episodes, and potentially 2 of the toughest opponents in the entire Mid-American Conference for the Cardinals. You start at Buffalo on Saturday, January 11th. Then on Wednesday, January 15th, you take that 5-hour bus ride up to Kent, Ohio to take on the Kent State Golden Flashes, last year's Mid-American Conference tournament champions. And then on Saturday, you return home for the first of 2 straight inside Worthen Arena in the span of 3 days against Akron on Saturday, the 18th. But, Sam, I want to start with the contest against Buffalo on Saturday, because these were the 2 teams that were heavily favored at the top of the Mid-American Conference preseason coaches poll. This is a Buffalo team that got out to a program best 12-0 before then falling in their second Mid-American Conference game against Kent State on national TV, on CBS Sports.
Yeah.
This is a Buffalo team that, although is favored to do some special things this year at the top of that MAC coaches poll, you look at this team and you say, wow, there are so many new faces from last year, just a year ago, a team that went to the Mid-American Conference tournament championship game. There's still 9 new faces on this team, but they've got almost 50% of the scoring still coming back, and 34% of that is thanks to Chella Watson. So even with her at that head of that veteran core that Buffalo has, and when you mix that with some good newcomers from the D1 level that third-year head coach Becky Burke has been able to bring in, this is a team that still does pose a lot of challenges.
It does pose a lot of challenges, Dom, but I got a question. Do you want my honest opinion or my tone back opinion of the Buffalo Bulls?
I have a feeling I know where you're going with this, so I want your honest opinion.
My honest opinion is that despite the fact that these two teams, I'm talking about Buffalo and Ball State here, are the two definitive best two teams in the MAC in terms of the preseason polls, they're built so differently. Ball State has all this depth. They've got the core four. I don't even want to talk about the injuries that Ball State has faced. They've got the core four, and then they've got such a deep bench. I mean, they had the MAC sixth player of the year last year in Annie Rauch. She's obviously not back, but Grace Kingery is making a strong campaign to maybe win that award this year. Buffalo, on the other hand, absolutely no depth. You talk about those 9 new faces. The only threat on this Buffalo team is Chella Watson. Brady Sally likes to say that none of the teams they play are one-trick ponies, right? That is absolutely not the case for Buffalo. It is Chella Watson or die. This team rises and dies by Chella Watson. Yes, they got out to this extraordinary undefeated streak to start the year. Who did they play, Dom? Did they play
the 357th toughest schedule out of 361 Division I teams?
That's
I will
exactly
say that.
what I'm saying. And Brady Sally will be the first to say that as well. They're better. Their record is better on paper because they haven't challenged themselves. They were rewarded in the mid-major top 25 poll with a higher ranking than Ball State, completely undeservingly so. Ball State challenged themselves in the Battle for Atlantis, where they got a marquee win against a Power 4 opponent in Texas A&M. Then they had an off game against South Dakota State to give them 3 losses in 4 games. Yes, maybe that warrants Ball State being taken down in the mid-major poll, but it certainly does not give Buffalo the right to think that they are the best team in the Mid-American Conference. Ball State challenged themselves on the road against Ohio State, and they have proven that they can not just win, but they can dominate competition within the Mid-American Conference. Buffalo is not prepared for what they have for Ball State. Could they play a good game and keep it close? Absolutely. But this Buffalo team has not faced an opponent like Ball State. This is a Ball State team that you throw them into a power conference, they can at least be competitive because they know how to challenge themselves, and Ball State knows that they have the ability to win every game they play in Mid-American Conference play. I don't think Buffalo can say that right now because of the lack of challenge that they pose to themselves in their non-conference schedule and because they have so many new faces. I like that Ball State is playing Buffalo so early in the season because they have the chance to go on the road in one of the toughest road trips in the Mid-American Conference and stun the Bulls, just kind of affirming their spot as the number 1 team in the Mid-American Conference. I'll keep my comments at that, but, I think Buffalo could have done a little more to challenge themselves up to this point, I suppose.
Preach, my friend. You took all the words out of my mouth. I wanted to say that, but I'm glad you
Sorry, I took it from you.
Well, I'm glad you had the guts to say it because I don't know if I had the guts to say it, but no, you're 100% right. I don't think this Buffalo team challenged itself at all in non-conference play, and I think the Cardinals are on a mission to prove to Buffalo you're not as top dog as you think you are, especially in this conference. It still right now runs through us with the way that we've been playing. So that should be a very interesting contest, to say the least, and we'll keep it there for the game against Buffalo on Saturday. Then you look at the second straight road game that these Cardinals will have to face. And these are 2 really tough places to travel in the Mid-American Conference, not just distance-wise, but environment-wise as well. On the road in the Mack Center, taking on Kent State, the Golden Flashes, a team that knocked the Cardinals out of the Mid-American Conference tournament a year ago, a team that went on to win the Mid-American Conference tournament and head to the NCAA tournament. Sam, you know that this Ball State team has a chip on its shoulder. Ball State 3-0 in the MAC right now, but Kent State 2-1. That is obviously going to change when these two teams face off against each other. But again, just like you can argue Ball State and Buffalo, the top 2 teams in the Mid-American Conference, you can also argue Ball State, Kent State, right there, 1 and 2.
And Kent State already proved that they might be better than Buffalo. They beat the Bulls to give them their only loss so far this year on national TV. Look, if you don't think that Ball State still loses sleep over that loss to Kent State in last year's MAC tournament, you're wrong. And it's not the fact that it's Kent State, and I don't think Ball State's going to hype this game up to be more than it is. It's just another opponent for them. Yes, it's against a really good team. Yes, it's against a team they lost to last year. But I don't think they're treating this game any different than they would an Eastern Michigan or a Central Michigan. With that in mind, yes, there are extra stakes, Dom. I know you were there in Cleveland last year calling this game. You felt the defeat. What do you expect Ball State's mentality to be on the road against Kent State, knowing that this is a team and a game with a little added pressure because of what happened last year.
Well, I don't think that there's going to be added pressure for this core group. This is a veteran group, and Brady Sally's talked about it all season long. This team knows how to get it done down the stretch. There's a calmness around these players. They've been in situations like this. This is a senior class that has been deep in the Mid-American Conference tournament every single year that they've been to Cleveland. You're talking about a Mid-American Conference championship game appearance in 2022 and then back-to-back semifinal appearances in 23 and 24. These players know what playing in these environments are like. These players know exactly what's going on here in the circumstances that they're facing. You know for sure that there's going to be a chip on this Ball State team's shoulder heading in to Kent, Ohio, especially with Kent returning a pretty decent amount of players from last year's team. It's not going to be an exact rematch of last year at all by any means, but it's still going to be a rematch between a core group of players on each team that faced each other in that Mid-American Conference tournament from a year ago. But I expect Ball State to have a little bit extra something for Kent State, especially on the road. This is a team last year that was dubbed the Road Warriors with how well they've played on the road. And even though there hasn't been nearly as many quote-unquote true road games for the Cardinals this year, and obviously you throw in the battle for Atlantis and that as well because of the neutral site games, I think Ball State's going to come out with a little bit of flair and a little bit of swag because this is, to me, one of the first times that this group can say, we are the team to beat in the MAC, because for the previous years, it had been Toledo, right? Toledo, three-time Mid-American Conference regular season champions. Now all eyes are on Ball State, and I think the Cardinals have done a nice job embracing that, and I think they're going to come in with a little bit of not only a chip on their shoulder into Kent, but with some swag, because they deservedly so should be able to say, we challenged ourselves in the non-conference. We know exactly who we are. Right now, we're the only undefeated team left in the Mid-American Conference in conference play. We don't have anything to prove. If anything, I think it's Kent that has something to prove from this game.
I couldn't agree more, Dom. It's going to be interesting to watch. That's one of the narratives that I think is going to be most intriguing when we sit back in these chairs a couple of months from now. This could be a game we point to maybe in our MAC tournament preview show as to really defining what the Mid-American Conference is about in 2025.
Both of these games, Buffalo and Kent, these are going to mean so much down the stretch, not only just for conference seeding, but for saying, okay, this is where we knew the Cardinals were. Let's see where they develop and grow from here, especially when the Cardinals see these two teams again later down the stretch, much later in the season. I don't want to harp on those two opponents as much because now we got to talk about Akron.
Yeah.
It's Greek night on, well, it says Greek night, but it's really Greek day.
Morning.
Greek morning, 11:30 a.m. tip. I was looking at the schedule. I see Greek night. I thought it would be a 7 p.m. or a 6:30 p.m. No, that's 11:30 in the morning for you on Saturday, January 18th. And by the way, what a turnaround as well. We won't talk about the Toledo game that following Monday on the 20th, but that's going to be fun, not only for the players, but for the fans trying to pack that place for the game on national television on CBS. But, you got to give a lot of credit to these players being ready to be able to turn it around for two games in 3 days. But we talk about that Akron team. And, Sam, I know you've got that one on your schedule. I know you haven't necessarily looked too heavily into Akron just yet, prep-wise. But for the basics on paper with the Zips, what do you see this year?
I see a team that puts the Mid-American Conference. They're not stellar, they're not terrible. They've actually exceeded my expectations at this point, 2-1 in conference play. They can win by double digits, they can lose by double digits. They're inconsistent. They are really just about midway through the MAC, and that's all you can really say about them right now. This is a team that, with another newer head coach, trying to find their footing a little bit, trying to put the pieces in place. That doesn't seem to bode well for a lot of teams going against Ball State. Maybe if you faced a Central Michigan or an Eastern Michigan or one of those lower seeded teams, maybe that could result in some more wins for Akron. We just saw a 2-point win on Wednesday night over Northern Illinois, so they can win close games. I don't think this game's going to be close, Dom. I know it's still a ways away, but I expect Ball State to take care of business in that one just as much as they would on any other day.
Yeah, I agree, and I'll leave it there. I think you summed it up well. Again, this is you lose Reagan Bass, who
that's a good
averaged
point.
almost, I believe, either was at a double-double last year or was just below a double-double average in points and rebounds. When you lose her to Purdue, that's a massive loss. And obviously, a newer head coach in his second season there in Akron, so still trying to pave his way and find his players in that new program. So I'll be very intrigued to see what Akron can do as well, because again, it's a younger team, and obviously when you have newer head coaches, you expect programs like that to start putting a couple more wins in the win column as the years go on. So I'm excited to see how much more competitive Akron is this year than the Zips were last year.
I couldn't agree more. There's a lot on the schedule ahead of Ball State right now that is going to be interesting. Some close games against really good teams. There's also chances for more blowouts like we saw against Eastern Michigan. So a lot to look forward to as we approach really the heart now of Mid-American Conference play.
Sam, any final thoughts before we wrap up our show?
If Ball State just keeps playing the way they have, if Allie Becky keeps playing the way she has been, this is a Ball State team that could be the best in the Mid-American Conference and one of the best mid-major teams in the country. And it's led by an Allie Becky who has a chance to be MAC Player of the Year and, again, one of the best mid-major players in the country.
Well said, my friend. I don't think I could have said it any better myself. That's going to do it here for episode 6 of Fast Break. Again, a huge thank you to freshman Grace Kingery for hopping on our show with us, especially on a very late notice as we record these episodes frantically in between games on non-game day. So thank you to Grace. Thank you for tuning in. So for Sam Niger and myself, Dominic Leacani, we appreciate you stopping by episode number 6 of Fast Break presented by GameBridge. We will see you in the next couple of weeks. Until then, take care, go Cards, and hopefully Ball State can rack up another 3 wins in between the times we talk to you. Take care. We'll catch you on the flip side. This has been Fast Break.
Thanks for listening to Fast Break, presented by GameBridge. The preceding has been a presentation of Ball State Athletics in Learfield.